So speak life, when the sun won't shine and you don't know why. Look into the eyes of the broken hearted, watch them come alive as soon as you speak hope, you speak love, you speak life.
Hi, and welcome to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. So glad that you are joining us today. This is a show that happens every single week at this time about people dealing with life. The purpose of it is to let you know that in your struggles, you are not alone. Everybody has struggles. The thing that we need to concentrate on is not what's happening, but how you deal with it. Every week we feature guests who deal with life. They have had struggles, but they've also had victories. And those victories include having a deepened faith. We also feature sometimes people who have been called to help others. But today, in the studio with me, is Vince Sica. We know each other through church. I've known you for a while, and I've always been totally intrigued by your story. You're a very dynamic individual. So how you doing, Vince?
I'm doing fine, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, so glad you took time out to talk with us. I want to get first people to understand who Vince is. Talk about you're from New York originally, right?
Yes, and as people ask me down here, even though I've been here since 1976, where are you from? And I says, well, what do you mean? I'm from here. And they say, not the wet accent we hear. And I guess what I like to tell people, I'm a damn Yankee. And they go, what?
What?
And I said, you don't know the difference between a Yankee and a damn Yankee? And they'll say, well, no. I says, well, a damn Yankee comes down and stays. A Yankee just leaves.
Just leaves.
And I'm very happy I'm a damn Yankee.
Well, we're real glad to have you. And I'm glad you kept the accent. So I know one thing about you. You're a car lover.
Yes.
How did that start?
Started very, very young at a very, very early age. My dad was a car nut. We had things to do when we grew up in New York. And the first thing every Saturday morning was wash his car, cut the lawn, make sure Mom didn't need any groceries. And he had an old 46 Chevy. And we had to do a valve job on it like every 12,000 miles. And that's how I started with my dad.
Okay.
And that's how I got involved in cars. There were 186 kids on our block. Most of them were Irish. I was probably the only Italian fellow at that time.
Okay.
I can tell you by the broken nose I had. But if it had a motor on it, it was probably somebody who had a lawnmower who didn't have the motor anymore, and it was now on one of the guys' bikes. They went fast, but the worst thing that we ever did was we never worried about brakes.
You wanted it to go. You didn't care about stopping.
Yeah, that's what hedges were for. If you had a slap down, you jumped into a hedge bush.
Okay.
But that's how I ended up doing that. Ended up drag racing, and for a while did some round stuff with quarter and half midgets.
Now, what's a midget?
Years and years ago in the 50s and 60s, large midgets were running in Indianapolis. Not the stuff they have today.
Oh,
they were
okay.
running on dirt tracks, an eighth of a mile or a quarter mile oval. And my uncle had a very successful lawnmower business and happened to, at the time, with another gentleman called Doyle B. Schaefer, develop a small quarter midget called the Lafayette, which the midget racing is still very, very popular today, especially in East Tennessee. You see it.
Absolutely.
It's an offshoot of go-kart racing.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the 2 years I raced, my cousin Charlie and I, we were the team. We were the Lafayette team. He was number 15 and I was number 17.
Okay.
And unfortunately, as you can tell, I'm 6'3", 220 pounds, and I haven't grown it in since I'm 14. Unfortunately, I outgrew the car.
You couldn't fit in the car.
So
perfect. But I want to backtrack for a second. You were in aviation and did some work for the lunar module. Talk about that.
When I graduated college on a football scholarship, my cousin Charlie and I, we were like almost twins. We both ended up at Grumman Aircraft. And at that time, there were two major programs going. There was the LEM, the lunar module that Shepard took.
Right.
And I helped design the lunar pad modules, the extender feet. There were 6 of us that designed those feet. So the first thing that touched the actual lunar surface was something that I designed, and NASA at that time gave us all Snoopy Awards, which were little Snoopies, and actually showed the flight path of the LEM.
Oh, my word.
So-
Now, for those who don't know life before cell phones, the lunar module was the unit that actually landed with man on the moon.
That's correct.
Wow.
That was the first one.
That's
That
incredible.
was the first one, and it was really enjoyable. But unfortunately, there were 36,000 of us working there at the time. Between that, with the Vietnam War developing the F-111, and it wasn't as enjoyable as I really thought it would be. It was fun to design something, but my really true love was people. I had a band, as everybody did. Probably back in the 50s or 60s if you played
Right.
an instrument. And being Italian, of course, I didn't have the monkey, but I had the accordion.
Okay.
And got together with 4 or 5 guys that we grew up with, and we started our little band and started working for the churches. And before you know it, and then result doing it, the band's working, we became very successful with a lot of groups in the city, as a lot of the kids did. And that kept me into racing, because I told that I would never take household money to take care of a hobby, and it disciplined me.
Oh, okay.
So I really enjoyed it.
But the band paid for racing.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, tremolos. You were
Tremolos.
part of the tremolos.
The original
Explain that a little
tremolos,
bit.
we did the Bristol Stomp,
The Bristol Stomp.
and I played the accordion on the Bristol Stomp.
And that it definitely incorporates people who
From
don't
way back
had
when.
to live
Yeah.
before cell phones.
That was way before the Bristol Stomp. That's when everything
Yeah.
was going. Chubby Checker was doing the twist, and we had the Bristol Stomp. The Bristol Stomp wasn't as good as the mashed potato. We tried to do it as good, but the mashed potato outdid the Bristol Stomp.
I got you. Okay.
But we had a lot of fun. A lot of people say, "What have you done what have you been doing, selling and working for the last 45 years?" I'm saying I haven't worked in 45 years because I'm having fun. Every morning I would get up and I did exactly what I wanted to do. I was in a racing performance industry, exciting industry. Everything was new. Cars were being built in the 50s and 60s. Cars were quantum and leaping like electronics today.
Sure.
I mean, you buy a brand new cell phone today, as soon as you put it in your pocket, it's obsolete.
Yeah.
And you can see the revolution we're having right now in cars with the electric cars coming out and everything else.
And it is exciting.
But in the 60s and 70s, it was horsepower and it was speed and excitement. Gas was 19 cents a gallon. back
Good
then.
point. Good point. Yeah.
So you didn't worry about that 20-gallon tank to fill up. But I took a hobby from my race car, and I had a 68 Camaro 427 600 horsepower Camaro that a company out in California called Hooker manufactured headers for. And with being involved with their engineers and having my design background, I helped design a set of headers for my car. They approached me at a race and said, would I be interested in going to work for them as a regional sales manager?
Okay,
And I'm
okay.
saying, okay, all right. Now explain
I get to
regional
do
sales
what I
manager.
love here? Wait.
I'm saying, wait. Now, you have to realize I was married 6 months. I was a newlywed. Had a very good job on the design boards. Everything was going good. And they said, well, we'll give you a company car. I goes, okay. And you'll have to go around to all of these big shops and these big speed shops that sell racing parts. I'm going, okay.
What's
then
the
you-
downside here?
And then I says, then you got to go to these races like Daytona and Indianapolis and Indianapolis drag races. And he goes, okay.
Yeah.
And I said, and we're going to pay you a salary. I went, okay. And you're going to get a commission. I said, okay.
Well,
And they
it's-
said, do you have any questions? I said, yeah. Is this legal? And that started me in the racing industry.
Got you.
After 27 years of married to my first wife.
Well, traveling didn't do that marriage
No,
any good.
traveling.
right?
Unfortunately, when you're out 26, 27 days a month, it hurts. But
Yes.
I saw so many people and have so many wonderful people and friends of mine all over the world that I wouldn't give it up for anything. But at the end, the racing industry got me down here because it's where I met my second wife, Jan, and the love of my life.
Well, now talk about, because this is such a great story. You guys met at a car show.
Okay. Actually, it was a motorcycle and car / show. Jan and her sister Shirley owned a company in Lenore City called Smokey Inc.
Okay.
that were distributors of the Weisco pistons for motorcycles and Harley Davidson and snowmobiles.
Okay.
And it was 1971 in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was their first show. And poor Jan and Shirley were there with a little neon sign that said Smokey and a little 10-foot space. And the funny part was both of these girls during setup were walking around barefoot. I says, boy, they must really be from Tennessee.
They don't even have shoes
They
in
didn't even have
Tennessee,
shoes on. Both Jan and I loved coffee. Coffee was very expensive at these shows, and I had a coffee pot in our booth. So we would share coffee. Also, we
Great
both
way
at
to
that time,
meet women, yes.
you know, good way to pick up women.
Yeah.
And at the same time also, she also smoked at that time. And so did I, and we had a little corner of our booth where we go hide out from the security people and grab a quick cigarette.
Perfect.
And for 5 years, we were on a show circuit. The exhibitors would all get together in the same hotel, so you would be there for 5 or 6 days at a show, and you'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner when everybody would get together.
Like a little family, yeah.
Yeah, it's family. And everybody helped everybody set up and everything else.
Sure.
And unfortunately, in 1976, the company I was with, we got out of the motorcycle industry. We felt there was more monies and more potential to be made in the automotive industries.
Yeah, okay.
So I lost track of Jan. Went on my way and continued selling in the racing industry, working for Hooker Industries and Interpart. And then from there went to a company called VDO Instrumentation, where I was with for 17 years, and was selling instrumentation for everything from motorcycle to automotive to big trucks, you name it. It was terrible. It was terrible. I had to go to Hatteras and go out on the 60-foot yachts for 3 or 4 days and make sure the gauges were working right.
That's tough.
Terrible,
Man.
terrible work.
Well.
But what happened was that put me back here in 1994, late 94, back here in Lenore City, Knoxville area for the NSRA Street Rod National show.
Okay.
And Jan somehow sent me a Christmas card with an 800 number. So I called her. I said, "Is Lenoir?" She says, "Who?" I says, "Is Lenoir City near Knoxville?" She says, "Lenore City is. I don't know where if Lenoir City is."
Yes.
So I came in for a show. It was a 3-day show, and I ended up staying 5. Guess who I went out to dinner with every night?
I'm wondering.
And unfortunately, at that time, my first wife and I were no longer together. We divorced. That she decided to move on, and she met a great guy, and they're very, very happy. And we adopted 2 wonderful children that have given us great grandchildren, and both the boys are great. And she's a great lady, and she still is today. Meanwhile, Jan and I started dating. And
you were still living north.
I was still traveling and up in Jersey.
Okay.
And we dated for about a year. And I wanted to make a commitment. She says, "Well, I'm not moving up north." I said, "Well, there's nothing really keeping me up north anymore." I says, "My boys are big, so I don't mind coming down." So my pride and joy at that time was my 55 Chevy, which was a 5-year build.
Good grief.
And I would take it to shows, and there was a car up in the Northeast called the Poison Ivy, and this car would take every show. He had $50,000 into that car, and I hand built mine for $15,000.
Good grief.
But I knew I couldn't beat it, so if he was there, I took second place. So Jan calls me one day, and she says, "I found a piece of property in Lenoir City." She says, "The only thing is $35,000. I says, "It's a little tight right now." I says, "But let me see what I can do." I happened to be at a show, put a for sale sign on the car, and that Sunday night drove down 811 miles.
Right.
And woke Jan up at 2 o'clock in the morning and handed her a paper bag with $32,500. And I said,
"Oh my!" Because you
"Do
sold the car.
not deposit this in one step. Do it at 6,000 miles." She said she didn't sleep for 4 days.
Having that cash right
She
there.
said, "I had the cash there. I slept with my mama's gun." I said, "You have a gun?"
So you moved here.
So before you know, make a short story long, we ended up in the house that I've been in now since 1996. We married in 96 and built it in 98.
Okay.
And had a great time with her 3 daughters and great children and stuff here.
Now we know your past or
Okay.
your history.
Okay.
I want to talk in a minute because there's some things about you that are definitely something to learn from.
Okay.
So that's step A.
Okay. Sounds
We'll
good.
be back here in a second on Dealing with Life with Vince Sica, talking about you lost Jan and you also dealt with prostate cancer. That's coming up.
Yes.
This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker. We'll deal with more in a second.
Who says you gotta have it all figured out? Who says you'll never feel alone in the crowd? Who says you gotta be like everyone else? Who says? Who says? If you could only let your guard down, if you could learn to trust me somehow, well I swear that I won't let you go. I won't let you go.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. That's a book about life, faith, worry, through the eyes of a dog. If you're a dog lover, or if you worry, or if you're a little both of that, this book, I think, will be a source of enjoyment for you. It's available through Amazon.com. It's available through BarnesandNoble.com, and also Cokesbury.com, locally at Long's Drugstore, Farragut Pharmacy, and more. In the studio with me today is Vince Sica. Vince is a transplant. He comes from New York City and New Jersey and is now living here. When we left off, we first heard a little bit about you and your love of racing and your love of cars, but we now understand that Jan brought you here from New Jersey, and you guys met at car shows.
That's correct.
So she pulls you here and lives in Lenore City, or is you mistaken?
Yes, I don't say Lenoir anymore. I say Lenore.
You because you live there. So, and you were basically a Catholic.
Yes.
And
I was raised in Catholicism, correct.
And so Jan introduces you to Methodist.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
It was really interesting. Well, first of all, she had to explain to all the people in the choir that you're marrying a guy from who, he was a what, and you're doing this when? And I think the word was, oh my God. But anyway.
And she said, yes, I am.
And she said, yes, I am. And we were very fortunate at that time that we had a very, very young student pastor, name of Larry Trotter, who right now is our senior pastor at Concord United Methodist Church.
Absolutely.
And
A
Larry,
terrific pastor.
with Jan, really introduced me into to being a United Methodist person, and more important, as Larry used to say, and I like to say, a disciple of Christ, doing things and showing people how the love of Christ has made a difference on your life, and showing them by deeds and thoughts and actions.
Yeah.
Not just mouthing.
Yes.
Not just showing up to church if you had to on Easter or Christmas, as you had to do with Catholicism.
Right.
When the nuns beat you to death. That's beside the point. But anyway, I didn't mean to say that. But it was an interesting experience. And I can remember the first 2 or 3 Sundays that Jan and I were married. And I traveled, as I told you, a lot of times. And I'd get home on a late Saturday night. And she says, why don't you sleep in? And she says, I'll be home about 1:30. Jan was the treasurer of Martell United Methodist.
Okay.
And involved with Larry and other pastors. And was with them for many, many years. And finally, after 2 Sundays of this, I said, you know what? This is Sunday morning. I want to be with my new bride. So I said, I'll jump in the car and sit in the back and see what this is all about. And it must have been the first Sunday of the month because they were doing communion.
Okay.
And Larry, our student pastor at that time, came out and said, this table is not the church's table. This is anybody's table who believes in the Lord and is a follower of Christ.
An open table.
And that was it. 3 weeks later, I'm in the choir. I'm singing.
Wow. Realize this is come as you are.
I said, this is a unique experience. Nobody's beating you. Nobody's forcing you to do something. It's from my heart. It was like, It was like all of a sudden a bunch of doors opened.
Wow.
And I started attending Sunday school with Jan. The people that were at Martell all grew up together, so they knew Bible verses here and there and everything else. And I was sort of like the expert on Catholicism because I was a Catholic, and having grown up in New York City, I knew probably more about the Jewish religion than they did. And sometimes I knew more about the Jewish religion than I did about the Catholic religion. But that's but it really showed me that I had a lacking of what the Bible was all about. Luckily, Larry started a Bible study program.
Okay.
And I said, Larry, I travel, so I might not be able to. He says, Vince, I can give you buy the booklet. We'll get to the booklet. We'll work through the booklet, and we'll work our way through it. And if you have any questions, we can talk back and forth, or call me, and we'll work something out. And all of a sudden, I started reading the Bible. And he says, but I don't want you to read Book of Revelations. Well, of course, if he tells you not to, what do you do? I'm on the road in Chicago at night reading the Book of Revelations, and I'm scared to death.
You can't read the ending first.
And you can't read the ending.
Yeah.
But it's really what started me, and before you know it, I got involved. Like I said, I was singing with the church. Larry continued with his beautiful wife, Lynn, and their 2 children to grow and flourish, and as he grew and was ordained, we then lost him to Concord.
Okay.
United Methodist Church.
Yeah. Where he is now.
And where he is now as senior pastor.
Yes.
And I followed Larry. I felt, Jan and I spoke, and she says, well, I'm going to stay with Martell because I've been with this church, and I'll probably be here till the day I pass away. And I said, well, I says, Larry, when he preaches and when he gives you a sermon, he's talking direct. I don't know how he does it, but he talks directly to me.
Yeah.
And for the first time coming to church, I find that I walk out of church with a burden off of myself.
Instead of being added, yeah.
I've been renewed for the week to go out and redo it and to face everything again, because I know
God
Christ
is good.
Is going to be with me.
God is
the
good.
Lord's going to be with me.
Yeah.
And the things that we talked about and that Larry teaches us and is discussing with us, and not only is he quoting Bible and verse, he's reaching down deep into his heart, to the throat of his heart, and he's telling you about his personal experiences, his hurts, sometimes his screw-ups, which got him to where he is today.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
And how God uses it.
And how God uses this, and you can do one of 2 things. You can turn it against yourself, or you can turn it to be, again, as a disciple of Christ.
Unfortunately, Jan did pass away.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jan was a very unique woman, as people who knew her was. Unfortunately, we had a 4-year battle with cancer with her, and she was unique because she was one of, I think, 3% of the people in the world that had chemo-resistant cancer cells.
Oh, my.
So for 4 years, we went through 12 different protocols, anywhere from MD Anderson to Thompson's to Mayo Clinic to Duke.
They just couldn't get it.
And unfortunately, 26 days in January, February of 2012, and we lost her and went across the river, as Larry says. And the one thing that kept us strong and the family strong and the faith strong was our full faith. First of all, she never wanted a negativity. Any person who was a negative, she didn't want to talk to them, because we were convinced with Lord's help and with praying that we were going to beat this.
Yeah.
Things happen for strange reasons, and
no, you'll see her again.
Well, I know I will.
Yeah.
And
well, the thing that I think is vitally important is your understanding of faith and your discipleship of Christ ultimately helped you through this.
Not only my determination, but the great support people and the support staff. And I'm not talking the people that are on payroll at Concord United Methodist Church. I'm talking about just the parishioners, the Concord United Methodist men, which I'm involved with, just people who heard about Jan, heard about my struggle, who would be there for me, who would say, God bless you, and pray, and
They actually helped instead of
actually
just...
helped there, and it was, it was like getting a big hug.
Yeah.
It was like getting a big hug, and like I said, at 6'3", 220 pounds, the Lord had big arms because I needed a big set of arms to come around me.
Yeah.
And I did this. Went into a depression. They helped me get through it.
Well, that's what a real church does.
And succeeded, and really does. And it just made me want to do more. So, and that's where we are almost today. Unfortunately, a year after Jan passed away, I come down with prostate cancer.
And that's a big part of your life because other family members...
Lost my dad to cancer. 6 months before I lost Jan, I lost my mom to cancer.
Oh, my. Well, that's where we're going to go next. We'll put a bookmark here.
Okay.
And we'll talk about how you beat that through the process, but also your faith carried you through and gave you strength through that.
I'm looking forward to it.
Vince Sica is with us. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, and we pray that this is inspirational for you. You understand that difficult circumstances happen. They happen to everybody. But the thing is, find your faith and your strength to pull you through it. God will extend his hand and give you strength. This is Dealing with Life.
I won't worry my life away. Oh, to everyone who's hit their limit, it's not over yet, it's not over yet. And even when you think you're finished, it's not over yet, it's not over yet. Keep on fighting, out of the dark into the light. It's not over, hope is rising. Never give in, never give up, it's not over. Yeah.
We're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, and we're talking with Vince Sica in the studio with us today. Vince, we have learned that is a race car fanatic, has been in racing and the auto and motorcycle industry for a long, long time. He lost his wife due to breast cancer, and that's kind of where we left off a minute ago. You lost your wife, but we're part of United Methodist Church that really helped you deal with it.
Yes.
But there's still a grieving process.
Yes, I did. What happened was, as I said, I lost Jan in February of 2012 and really went into I don't know the actual technical term, but I went into a funk.
Yeah.
I was depressed. I was grieving. I lost a woman that I was really convinced of that I was going to spend the rest of my life with.
And that's natural. I don't think God has any problem with anybody grieving.
To just back up for a real quick second, I realized for the 4 years I was fighting cancer with Jan that I had to be healthy mentally and spiritually to take care of her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went and had gastric bypass surgery done.
Okay.
And I don't know if you don't remember me back then, but I used to be 370.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes. And a lot of the guys who remember us, they said it was amazing to see, like, every couple of weeks you'd show up and you'd say, where did the other half of him go? So I had this, spiritually, I was strong. Jan and I had it together. No matter where we were, we always said grace and thanks to the Lord for our time together and for the meal. I had the family. I was healthy. We were going to beat this thing. And then the shoe dropped. So I did go into a funk. Concord United Methodist Church at that time had a doctor working for them called Steve Herbies. I hope I can mention his name, and I'm going to anyway because he did a great job for me.
Right.
And grievance counselor, and he walked me through and really got me through not only the grievance part of it, but how also you can turn the grievance spiritually around to turn it, to work it for you, to use it in your daily life, to go out and to continue on with life.
Yeah, there's a point where you've got to start moving.
Where you have to start moving. You know, get off being a couch potato and start doing things. And that plus the United Methodist Men programs and the Habitat Build programs and the different programs that we have at Concord really, really got me going again, moving.
Yeah, involved.
As involved.
Yeah, and then
January 2018, and 13, the other shoe drops.
Not even a year after you lost Jan.
Yes.
Wow.
And I go to my yearly checkup, and I have a PSA comes in, and all of a sudden my PSA went from 1.4 to 9.6 in 3 months.
Yikes.
And my internist says, you better get to see an oncologist as quickly as possible. Next day I was in his office. 3 days later I had a biopsy done. And I came back with a very aggressive enlarged prostate with a Gleason of 9.
Which is not good.
Which is the worst you can get.
Yikes.
And, first thing I do is that luckily my son Vinny was here. People from church were here to help me. And what do you do? Who do you do? Who do you talk to about? What's going on here? I mean, yeah, I've got a size 48, 50 shoulders, but Lord, they're kind of broad, but don't you think you put a little much on me in the last couple of years? Maybe we should talk about this.
Yeah.
But luckily, my next-door neighbor, who's also a street rod nut and a car builder, Bob Kaufman,
okay.
I remembered 3 years ago, he went to Florida for some sort of treatment of prostate.
Okay.
And I called Bob that night. I actually had surgery scheduled. And Bob says...
Removal surgery.
Removal surgery. And it's not that you can't lick prostate cancer. It's the quality of life when you finish with it.
Yeah, that can be very difficult.
I mean, through either IMRT or through robotic surgery, or which I found out this treatment called proton treatment, which is a form of IMRT, but at the same time, it's very direct and it's very pointed, so there is no surrounding tissue is affected.
Right,
so
the radiation
all your nerve endings,
is all right there.
All your nerve endings continue, so your quality of life. You don't run into a situation where you have discharge or sometimes EDT or whatever. So Bob says, don't do anything. Call this 800 number. Call that 800 number. The next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, this whole package shows up explaining what proton is, the type of treatment it is. Fill it out. I sent it back down.
And this is before proton therapy was here in town.
This is before proton therapy was here in town. 2 weeks later, my son and I drive all night down to Jacksonville, Florida, to the University of Florida Proton Center, sit down with everybody, and luckily I was over 65 at the time, and they said, your Medicare supplement will cover all your treatment.
Oh, my.
But we have to do something quickly. And I said, well, what, in speaking to the other patients there, I said, well, what's the lead time right now on treatment? They say, right now it's about 3 to 5 weeks out. And the doctor, Dr. Henderson down there says, we want you back here in 10 days to start treatment. I went, what?
Oh, my.
10 days. And how long am I going to be here? He says, we're going to do 43 treatments. You'll be down here roughly 10 weeks.
But they also gave you very high odds.
Yes. The protocol that they had me on were very, very, very hard. They said that right now, with a 3 years of results, that they had a 96% success rate.
That's a pretty good success rate.
I'll roll those dices. So to make a short story long, I go down, come back up. My son and I drive back up. Luckily, they had a great housing program. I found a beautiful place, 2-bedroom place on the water. Absolutely loved it.
Nice.
And the side effects were nil.
None.
You'd go in
you
for
didn't
treatment.
Have any.
You go in for treatment for 20 minutes, 30 in the morning. And a lot of people down there, they call it the radiation vacation.
Oh, my.
There was no side effects. The only side effects you had is there was a little tiredness, and that was it. And there were guys there that were having...
No anything?
No pain, no nothing.
Wow.
Guys were there were having treatment at 8 o'clock and teeing off at 9:30.
Oh, my.
Came back here. PSA went down from 9.6 to 3.1. Put me on Lupron, which is a hormonal drug, which basically knocks out your testosterone level.
Right.
And that's why I can now go into a unisex bathroom if I want, because I don't, every morning I would get out and say, I'm so pretty, I'm so pretty. But at the same time, found out that they were starting a proton treatment up here.
Yeah,
at
Provision.
Provision Proton Treatment at Dowell Springs.
Okay.
And they were looking for ambassadors and people that had treatment down in Florida to come in and sit down with them and say, what did we really enjoy and like about Florida, and how they could maybe improve on that relationship, and started doing that. So I became an ambassador.
Oh yeah, and you really have helped a lot of people. You're one of the people.
That's
my
right.
company did the commercial where you had your shirt off, and you. What letter were you?
I'm N for Nancy. And if you want to know what Tom's talking about, if you're ever at Tyson Airport and you're picking up your luggage, there's a huge 60-foot sign up there that says Provision Center Proton Treatment, and I'm the N for Nancy, so I bared my chest for proton.
That's awesome.
But at the same time, I became an ambassador and went out and spoke to the churches and to different organizations about the effect of proton, and great people over at the Provision Center and what they're doing. And they have developed, and they are the top leading proton center right now in the world, because they have developed a pencil beam, which is even more precise.
More precise than what you got.
Than what I got originally.
Wow.
And as the Lord works in mysterious ways, I would have found out that if that center would have been here when Jan was having her treatment, they probably could have given her probably an additional 2 to 3 years of extended life.
Wow.
But you know what? We're here to help somebody else. That's why you do protocols. That's why Jan would say, I'm going to do protocols. I'm going to do different protocols because we're going to try to give back. This is what the Lord wants us to do. They want us to give back, to people. So that's what I do. And every Wednesday, I'm over there. They have a great lunch.
At the Proton Center?
At the Proton Center. And what I'm going to say right now is that they're now doing almost 80 to 85 different cancers.
At Provision.
At Provision.
Wow.
And it's not just prostate anymore.
They started with prostate.
That was the beginning. And now they're doing breast, stem, eye surgery, and
maybe
what is really wonderful, and the Lord looks down on you when you see an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old child come in a wheelchair, and they work very closely with Children's Hospital here.
Okay.
And you see them 4 or 5 weeks later walk out.
That's amazing. And I know Provision's building a unit in Nashville.
Scott Hamilton with Provision is building another unit in Franklin, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it is the wave of the future.
You know, you look at, you ask God for healing, and sometimes it's not just poof, you're healed. God has arranged it to where people are motivated to learn and get trained and go to school for this, to do things like proton therapy and help people invent this. And He is healing people through this.
What's even more important, Tom, is they have what they call the victory bell. And after you finish your treatment, there's a huge bell, and you ring it 3 times for your victory over cancer.
It's done.
And
it's beaten.
The first word out of people's mouth is that we want to thank our Lord Savior, Jesus Christ, for giving us this center here, and for people to welcome us to this family to heal us.
Vince Sica, what an incredible story. You have gone through difficult times, through struggles, sometimes more than you thought you could bear, but you have come out smiling. You have come out with the strength that God has given you to not only overcome, but to help others. And that's so powerful. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, and we'll deal with more in just a minute.
You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. I got a new lease on life. They say you only live once, but I live twice. I got a new lease on life. I got a new lease on life.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. And in the studio, we've had Vince Sica, who sadly lost his wife due to breast cancer, and also dealt with prostate cancer himself, but has completely beaten it. If you were to meet up with somebody who was just recently diagnosed with a type of cancer, what would you tell them?
Tom, I would tell him the first thing to do is to have faith that the Lord is with him. The second is to look into proton treatment. There are now 27 different centers across the United States. Let your fingers do the walking. today on this wonderful thing that we have called the internet.
Yeah.
And come here. And right now, the Knoxville Center is the leading center in the United States.
The Provision Center.
The Provision Center here. Call for a consultation. Ask your doctor about proton. It is no longer, as they say, an experimental treatment. This is tried and true, and you're listening to one of them right here.
Yeah, absolutely. You are a success story.
Yes,
and I would say through the Proton Center, if they want to talk to you,
yes,
and hear your story and what you've dealt with, I'm sure they'll connect you.
Yes, as a matter of fact, one of the things about being an ambassador of their program is that if people call in and they have questions and they want to talk to a patient, no matter what cancer that they're treated. I can only speak as myself personally.
You're not a doctor.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
But I can talk to the treatment, how it works, and how it's successful for me. They have women there who can talk about breast cancer. They have men there that have been in for eye surgery and tumors in their surgery, stem cell cancer, everything else.
Wow.
Anything that's a mass, in most cases, they can treat. It's worth a phone call.
It's worth a phone call and at least worth a second opinion.
Definitely.
Because they are doing magic over there. They're saving lives, and that's incredible. And Concord Methodist, you and I both attend there, and I cannot. It's just magical. The place is growing like crazy.
It is.
And I think the most magical thing that is happening there is they're giving opportunity to serve. Because
yes,
that's what being a disciple of Christ is all about. You may be in a difficult circumstance, but if you go out and help somebody else, it makes yours seem a little more tolerable. Go out and serve and see other people who are in more need than you.
You know, people say, well, what are you doing this weekend, Vince? Well, we have a crop drop. Well, what are you talking about? Oh, we got 40,000 pounds of sweet potatoes coming in, and we're going to put them in 10 pounds bag. And they say, what? No, that's what we do.
But that goes
to help the community,
to
feed people.
It is. It's incredible.
To show it by not just mouthing, but by actions. I also am very proud that I co-chair the Habitat
golf tournament.
Which we're doing right now, and we're in our 20th house that we've built.
That's awesome.
And they have the support group. If anybody has a problem, if anybody has a concern, we've got 5 great pastors there that are on call that'll talk you through anything, work you through anything. We've got support people that'll help you. Just come out and visit. I mean, if anything, come out to what we refer to as SML, which is our musical tribute at 8:45 and 11, and listen to the greatest drummer in the world called Tom Baker.
Get out of here. You've been wonderful. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tom.
And sharing your life with us and what you've learned through hard knocks, through struggles, through the grace of God.
Thank you, Tom.
This is Dealing with Life. We do this every single week at this time. And the goal is to let you know that God's there. His strength will be there for you. No matter what you're going through, God has the strength. He is bigger than whatever you're going through. This is Dealing with Life.
You speak